Welcome to Poland Daily History with me, Nicholas Richardson. In this series of episodes, we're looking at Poland's relations with its neighbours. And I'm joined in the studio to discuss Czech-Polish relations by Professor Krzysztof Jabłonka. Professor, in the previous episode, we heard how the newly formed Czechoslovakia, as it then was, took advantage of Poland fighting the Russians to acquire some territory which many considered should have been Polish territory. Of course, in 1938, Poland was able to reverse this situation. Could you say some words about that, please?
Polska utraciła sporne terytorium Zaolzia w 1920 roku.
Poland lost the disputed territory of Zaolzie in 1920 when the capital of Poland was in danger. We had to give the plebiscite up, and that is why this arbitrary land was accorded to Czechia. Poland couldn't forget it for a long time. In a situation when Czech Republic was at risk, the country was granting gradually more and more rights to the German minority, with an estimated 3 million. At the same time, they neglected the Polish minority in Zaolzie. That is when the Polish government proposed signing an agreement on granting Poles the same rights as the Germans had. On this basis, when Czechs betrayed by their Western allies were forced to give the territories inhabited by the Germans to Germany after the Munich Agreement in 1938, Poles demanded implementation of the agreement and, what is more, giving back the territories inhabited by their citizens. Czechs were hoping that the Soviet Union would help them deal with Poland's demands. Unfortunately, the Soviets didn't help them. Our minister enforced the ultimatum, and we finally recovered our lands. When Czechs found out that the Germans wanted to take these lands and exchanged them for Gdańsk, they immediately gave them back to Poland. They even helped them fight the Germans, who had already started entering the Polish territory through the Oder River. In 1939, when Czechoslovakia was about to be destroyed, the Czech servicemen came up with a very interesting project: an alliance with Poland, in other words, a union embracing all the Slavs. It meant that Poland could use Czech's army and its military equipment to fight the Germans. If this agreement had been signed before the Munich Agreement, the Second World War would not have happened. Unfortunately, the then Prime Minister, who later became the President, Edvard Beneš, was against the agreement. Years later, it turned out that he was a Soviet agent. The Soviet Union and Stalin wanted war, not a federal state. That is why he was against the agreement. The Polish and the Czech side touched on the subject of the common alliance during World War II. General Sikorski was cooperating with the Czech government in exile. Together, they were trying to establish a federal state, but again, Beneš's activity got in their way. Our general lost his life because Czech's pilot lost control over the plane and crushed it into the Mediterranean Sea under mysterious circumstances. After this, no one talked about it ever again. Czechs thought that the Soviet Union would take their side and launched military actions as soon as the Second World War ended. With all the knowledge they possessed during the First World War, the Polish army attacked the Czech army and pushed them back to their border. The borders were redrawn exactly as ordered by Stalin. He wanted them to be redrawn exactly the way they were in 1938. There was a school built on a Polish-Czech borderline. They drew the border on its rooftop in order to follow Stalin's order. Polish-Czech relations were quite bad until 1968. That is why Poland took part in the invasion on Czechoslovakia.
I właściwie bardzo złe były kontakty z Czechami do 1968 roku i bez trudu zaowocowały udziałem Polski w agresji na Czechosłowację.
Professor, 1968, the Prague Spring, Soviet forces, including a Polish contingent, Warsaw Pact forces, are sent to Prague to put down the rebellion, and yet there was one spectacular protest against this in Poland. Could you say something about that?
No, tak jak w Czechach zaprotestował Jan Palach.
In Czechia, there was a man called Jan Palach who poured gasoline on himself and burned himself to death in order to show his protest, just like Buddhist monks did in Vietnam. In Poland, on the other hand, the resident of the city of Rzeszów and the former soldier of the Home Army, Ryszard Siwiec, came to Warsaw during the Harvest Fest, which was a happy celebration, and set himself on fire as well. He did it to show that he is against the Prague Spring, the Soviets' aggression. We have to emphasize the fact that Poles were trying not to be involved in the invasion. They didn't attack Zaolzie, they invaded the city of Hradec Králové. During their invasion there, Poles were trying to act like humans, not invaders. Some local patriots were trying to fight with them. They also blamed them for the invasion. But at the same time, Polish soldiers were trying to explain that they were not the invaders, the Soviet Pact was. During the Polish protests of 1970 that occurred in northern Poland, Czech decision-makers got in touch with Poles. I remember how we used to transfer tissue paper through a secret passage of former smugglers in the Tatra Mountains to Slovakia and printed books to Poland. The meetings of the decision-makers of both countries, including the president of Czechoslovakia, Václav Havel, were held in Highlanders' huts. They established the Polish-Czechoslovakian Confederation or organization. By establishing this Slavic alliance, they were trying to fight the aggressive Soviets. The Czechs were no longer Russophiles. Both nations, also Slovakians, wanted to join Western Europe because we felt just like the countries of the West. We were against the interference, dictatorship and the destruction of our culture by the Soviets and the Russian language.
No i ogromnej presji kulturalnej, niszczenia naszej kultury wschodu sowieckiego z językiem rosyjskim.
That's all we've got time for on this edition. I'd like to thank my guest, Professor Krzysztof Jabłonka. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and do join us again as we delve into the annals of Polish history.